Captain Jiwan pressed her face against the cold metal window of the UES Harmony, watching the massive space station that floated before them, like a silver city among the stars. The Galactic Coalition Council Station was bigger than anything humans had ever built, with towers that stretched for miles and lights that twinkled like diamonds across its surface. Today, this beautiful structure would become the place where humanity learned they were not welcome in the galaxy. The voting chamber inside. The station buzzed with activity as hundreds of alien species took their seats. Representatives from across the known galaxy had traveled here to decide one simple question: should humanity be allowed to join the Galactic Coalition? The humans waited, nervously in their designated area, watching as creatures they had only seen in books and videos filled the enormous room. Admiral Minho stood rigid in his dress uniform, feeling sweat run down his back, despite the cool air. His hands shook slightly as he watched the Altarian delegate rise to speak. The tall blue-skinned alien looked down at the human section with obvious disgust, before beginning to address the assembly in a voice that echoed through the chamber like thunder. "We have studied these humans for many cycles," the Altarian said, pointing one long finger toward where Minho and his team sat. "Their history is written in blood and violence. They fight wars over resources, over land, over ideas that others find meaningless. They have weapons that can destroy entire cities, and they have used them against their own kind. How can we trust such creatures with the secrets of galactic civilization?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber as other delegates nodded their heads. Many had heard stories about human conflicts, about the wars that had shaped Earth history. The images of nuclear explosions and battlefield destruction had spread across the galaxy, making humans seem like monsters to many peaceful species. Dr. Soman felt her heart sink as she listened to speaker after speaker condemn her species. The Nexari representative talked about human aggression. The Vorthan delegate mentioned human unpredictability. Even species that had never directly interacted with humans seemed convinced that Earth people were too dangerous for civilized society. The human delegation had prepared for this. They knew their history was messy and violent, but they had also brought evidence of human achievements, art, and music that moved people to tears, scientific discoveries that could help heal diseases, technology that could make life better for everyone. They had hoped these positive aspects would outweigh the negative ones. Ambassador Yuna rose when called upon to defend humanity. Her voice was steady and clear as she spoke about human progress, about how Earth had moved beyond its violent past. She talked about the United Earth government that had ended wars between nations, about the peace that had lasted for over 50 years, about human exploration and discovery that sought to learn rather than conquer. But her words seemed to fall on deaf ears. The alien delegates had already made up their minds. They saw humans as a threat to the stability they had worked so hard to build. The galaxy had been peaceful for thousands of years. Why risk that peace by letting in a species known for fighting? The vote began with each species casting their decision on the massive display board that dominated. The chamber green lights meant support for human membership. Red lights meant rejection. As the votes appeared one by one, it became clear that humanity was facing overwhelming opposition. The red lights far outnumbered the green ones, creating a sea of rejection that hurt to look at. Captain Jiwan watched from the viewing area as the final tally appeared. 847 votes against human membership, only 3 votes in favor. The mathematics were brutal and clear. The galaxy did not want humanity as part of their civilization. The dream of joining the stars as equals was dead. The announcement came from Chancellor Arcturus himself, the leader of the Coalition Council. His voice boomed through the chamber as he declared, "Resolution 2847 passed by overwhelming majority. Humanity would not be granted membership in the Galactic Coalition. Furthermore, Earth would be restricted from accessing Coalition trade routes, scientific exchanges, and resource-sharing agreements." Words hit the human delegation like physical blows. They had spent years preparing for this moment. Years of diplomacy and negotiation had led to this crushing defeat. The galaxy was effectively cutting them off, treating them like dangerous children who could not be trusted with adult responsibilities. Admiral Minho felt rage building in his chest, but forced himself to remain calm. These aliens thought they knew humanity, but they had only seen the surface. They judged Earth based on old conflicts and ancient fears without understanding what humans had become or what they were capable of achieving. Dr. Soman began taking notes as the alien delegates explained their decision. She wanted to remember every word, every excuse they gave for rejecting humanity. The scientific community back on Earth would need to know exactly what they were dealing with. These aliens feared human potential more than they admitted. The session ended with formal documents being transmitted to Earth. The rejection was now official and legally binding under galactic law. Humanity was alone in the cosmos, surrounded by civilizations that wanted nothing to do with them. The isolation was complete and devastating. Back on Earth, President Hyunwoo received the news, in his office overlooking the rebuilt city of New Seoul. The man who had led humanity through its greatest period of unity and progress now faced the task of explaining to 8 billion people that they had been rejected by the galaxy. The announcement was broadcast simultaneously across every nation and every language. President Hyunwoo stood before the cameras with dignity and strength, even as his heart broke for his species. He explained the coalition decision without anger or bitterness. Simply, stating the facts of what had happened, citizens gathered in public squares and living rooms across Earth to hear their leader speak. Many felt crushing disappointment at the rejection. Children who had dreamed of visiting alien worlds and making friends among the stars now learned that those dreams were impossible. Adults who had hoped for new opportunities and adventures felt the weight of galactic prejudice, but President Hyunwoo did not end his speech with despair. Instead, he looked directly into the cameras and spoke words that would be remembered for generations. We will not beg for acceptance from those who judge us by our past, rather than our potential. We will not change who we are to fit their expectations. Humanity will forge its own path among the stars. The president closed his speech with a promise that would prove prophetic. The galaxy thinks it knows what humans can do when we work together. They have no idea what we can achieve when we are truly united. This rejection will not weaken us. It will make us stronger than they ever imagined possible. Unknown to the celebrating aliens in the Coalition Council, the seeds of their greatest mistake had just been planted. Humanity would spend the coming years proving that being excluded from their club was the best thing that could have happened to Earth. The galaxy would learn too late that humans were never more dangerous than when they were underestimated. 5 years had passed since the galaxy rejected humanity, and Dr. Yuna had barely slept for 3 days straight. Her underground laboratory beneath New Seoul hummed with energy as massive machines worked around the clock. The rejection by the Galactic Coalition had changed everything about how humans approach science. Instead of trying to copy alien technology, they had decided to create something completely new. The breakthrough came at 3 in the morning when Yuna was running her 1,000th test on the dimensional fold generator. The machine that looked like a metal ring surrounded by glowing crystals suddenly tore a hole in space itself. A perfect circle of swirling energy appeared in the center of the ring, showing stars that were light years away from Earth. Yuna stared at her creation with wide eyes and shaking hands. She had done what alien civilizations claimed was impossible. She had created a stable wormhole that could connect any 2 points in the galaxy instantly. The technology that the Coalition guarded so carefully was now obsolete compared to what one human scientist had built in her basement. Word of the discovery spread quickly through Earth government channels. President Hyunwoo himself came to see the demonstration along with the top military and scientific leaders. When the wormhole opened to show the surface of Mars in real time, the room fell completely silent. Everyone understood that humanity had just changed the rules of space travel forever. Commander Taeyang volunteered to lead the first exploration mission through the new portal. He was young and fearless, exactly the kind of person needed for such a dangerous assignment. His team of 12 brave volunteers stepped through the swirling energy and found themselves on a planet orbiting a distant star within seconds instead of years. The world they discovered was unlike anything in Coalition records. It was rich with rare metals that alien civilizations had never found. The soil contained elements that could power human technology for centuries. The oceans held compounds that could revolutionize medicine and manufacturing. Taiyang realized they had found something the galaxy had overlooked completely. Back on Earth, engineer Ji Hye was solving another impossible problem. How could humanity build the infrastructure needed to compete with civilizations that had thousands of years head start? Her answer came in the form of molecular assemblers, machines that could build anything, from basic atoms and molecules. The first assembler was the size of a house, but it could create complex structures in hours instead of months. GI fed it raw materials and programmed blueprints, and watched as space stations grew before her eyes. Like magic, the machine arranged atoms into perfect formations, creating materials stronger than anything the Coalition had ever developed. Within months, human colonies were sprouting across hidden star systems. The molecular assemblers built entire cities in days, creating homes for millions of people who wanted to escape Earth overcrowding. Each colony was equipped with technology that made it completely self-sufficient. They needed nothing from the Coalition or anyone else to survive, and prosper biologist Seokmin was working on the human problem itself. How could Earth people compete with alien species that had evolved on different worlds? His research into genetic adaptation opened up possibilities that amazed even him. Humans could be modified to survive in environments that would kill most galactic species. The first test subjects volunteered to have their DNA altered to survive on high radiation worlds. Within weeks, they were walking on planets where Coalition species needed heavy protective suits. The modified humans breathed toxic atmospheres, swam in acid oceans, and lived comfortably on worlds with crushing gravity or freezing temperatures. News of these achievements spread through Earth underground networks but remained completely hidden from galactic civilization. The Coalition intelligence services were looking for traditional signs of technological development. They watched for large industrial projects, energy signatures from known power sources, and communication patterns that matched their own technology. What they missed was that humans had gone in completely different directions. Human wormhole generators used quantum mechanics in ways alien science had never considered. The molecular assemblers worked on principles that Coalition physicists thought were impossible. The genetic modifications were based on biological research that alien species had abandoned as too dangerous. Captain Wanho commanded the first human stealth fleet ships that could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. His vessels were built using materials and designs that Coalition sensors could not detect. They moved through space like ghosts, striking pirate bases and rescuing ships in distress before vanishing, without explanation. The pirates who had terrorized Coalition trade routes for decades began disappearing overnight. Entire fleets would attack merchant vessels only to find themselves facing weapons they had never seen before. Human ships would appear from nowhere, destroy the pirates completely, and leave before Coalition patrols arrived. Colony Governor Kangman oversaw the development of Kepler 442b into a technological marvel. The planet had been considered worthless by Coalition surveys because of its harsh environment, but human genetic modifications and molecular assemblers turned it into a paradise. Cities grew from the bedrock itself, using materials that could withstand any weapon in the galactic arsenal. The farms on Kepler 442b produced food using techniques that transformed barren soil into fertile ground in months instead of centuries. Modified crops grew in conditions that would kill normal plants, providing enough food to feed billions of people. Human agriculture was becoming more efficient than anything the Coalition had developed. Ambassador Yunha operated from hidden stations throughout Coalition space, establishing secret relationships with species that were tired of Coalition control. Many worlds provided resources to humanity in exchange for advanced technology and protection from Coalition oppression. These partnerships remained completely invisible to Coalition intelligence. The Nexari mining colonies were struggling with equipment failures until mysterious shipments of advanced tools began appearing. The Vorthan agricultural worlds were facing crop diseases until human medicine arrived with no explanation. The Altarian research stations were reporting impossible breakthroughs after receiving data from unknown sources. General Dongho commanded human military forces that had grown far beyond Earth's original capabilities. Millions of soldiers trained with weapons and tactics that were completely foreign to Coalition military doctrine. They could fight in environments where alien soldiers would die instantly, using strategies that no galactic civilization had ever encountered. Human shipyards were producing vessels that combined wormhole technology with molecular construction and genetic crew modifications. The result was a fleet that could appear anywhere, strike with devastating precision, and vanish before enemies could respond. Coalition military experts would have been terrified if they had known what humanity was building. The Coalition began noticing strange phenomena across their territory, but had no idea what was causing them. Ships disappeared without sending distress signals. Resources appeared on struggling worlds with no explanation. Trade routes became safer as pirates vanished, but nobody knew who was protecting them. President Hyunwoo met regularly with his advisors to review humanity progress in secret. The rejection that had seemed like a disaster 5 years earlier was now clearly the best thing that had ever happened to Earth. Humans had been forced to become innovative, independent, and unified in ways they never would have achieved as junior coalition members. The galaxy thought they knew what humans were capable of, but they had only seen Earth at its weakest and most divided. Now humanity was united by rejection and driven by the need to prove themselves. The coalition had created their own worst nightmare by underestimating what humans could achieve when they worked together toward a common goal. 10 years after the Great Rejection, humanity had quietly become the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. They controlled technology that made coalition science look primitive, commanded resources that dwarfed alien wealth, and possessed military capabilities that could challenge the entire galactic order. The stage was set for a revelation that would shake the galaxy to its foundations. 10 years after the Great Rejection, humanity had built something the galaxy had never seen before. Captain Nari stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching as 300 human warships materialized from wormholes around the Proxima system. The fleet appeared without warning, like ghosts becoming solid, each vessel more advanced than anything the Coalition had in their entire navy. The ships themselves were works of art and engineering that defied galactic understanding. Their hulls were made from materials that could absorb energy weapons and redirect the power back at attackers. The engines used wormhole technology to move instantly across vast distances, making traditional space combat obsolete. Human vessels could strike anywhere, vanish completely, and appear somewhere else before enemies even knew they were under attack. Nari had been born on Earth, but raised in the hidden colonies. She represented a new generation of humans who had never known defeat or rejection. Her crew was genetically modified to survive in space without protective suits and trained in combat techniques that no alien military had ever encountered. They were the perfect soldiers for a war the galaxy did not know was coming. The human colony on Kepler 442b had become the crown jewel of the hidden empire. Governor Kangmin walked through cities that rose from solid rock like crystal forests. The buildings were grown rather than built, using molecular assemblers that arranged atoms into structures stronger than diamond yet lighter than aluminum. Every surface gleamed with technology that would have seemed like magic to coalition scientists. The streets were filled with humans who had been modified to thrive in the planet's harsh environment. They breathed the toxic atmosphere without masks, swam in the acid rivers without protection, and worked in the crushing gravity without strain. Children played games that involved jumping hundreds of feet into the air, using their enhanced muscles and bones. Food production on Kepler 442b had reached levels that amazed even human planners. The modified crops grew in soil that had been transformed from barren rock, using techniques that could turn any dead world into a garden paradise. Farms produced enough food to feed billions while taking up only a fraction of the planet's surface. The rest was left for cities, research facilities, and manufacturing centers. Ambassador Yuna moved through coalition space like a shadow, establishing relationships that would reshape the galactic order. Her hidden diplomatic stations were placed throughout alien territory, disguised as asteroids or debris fields. From these bases, she contacted species that were unhappy with coalition rule, offering them something they had never had before: a real alternative. The Nexari mining worlds were struggling under coalition taxation that took most of their profits. Human technology arrived through secret channels, offering mining equipment that could extract resources 10 times faster than anything the aliens possessed. In exchange, the Nexari provided raw materials and strategic intelligence about coalition military movements. The Vorten agricultural colonies were facing crop failures that threatened millions with starvation. Human genetic specialists arrived as mysterious advisors showing local farmers how to modify their plants to survive in changing climates. The grateful Vorten secretly began providing food and supplies to human colonies while hiding their new benefactors from coalition authorities. Even some Altarian research stations had been contacted by human scientists, offering discoveries that advanced alien knowledge by centuries. The proud blue-skinned aliens who had led the vote against humanity found themselves using human innovations without knowing where the technology came from. Their greatest discoveries were actually gifts from the species they had rejected. General Dongho commanded military forces that had grown beyond anything Earth had possessed during the rejection. His soldiers numbered in the millions spread across dozens of hidden worlds. Each was equipped with weapons and armor that made them nearly invincible against traditional galactic forces. They could fight in vacuum without suits, survive direct hits from energy weapons, and move through space using personal wormhole generators. The human military had developed tactics that no alien civilization could understand or counter. Traditional space battles involved fleets meeting in open space exchanging fire until one side was destroyed. Human forces could appear inside enemy formations, strike vital targets, and vanish before return fire was possible. They fought like spirits that could become solid at will. Human intelligence networks had infiltrated every major coalition government and military organization without being detected. The aliens were looking for traditional spy techniques like coded communications and hidden bases. They never suspected that humans could appear anywhere instantly using wormhole technology, or that genetic modifications allowed human agents to pass as members of other species. The coalition began experiencing problems they could not explain. Trade routes that had been plagued by pirates for centuries suddenly became safe without any increase in patrol activity. Struggling colonies received mysterious aid that solved their problems overnight. Research stations made breakthrough discoveries using data that appeared from unknown sources. Coalition intelligence services investigated these phenomena, but found no evidence of organized intervention. The help seemed to come from nowhere and disappear just as mysteriously. There, best analysts concluded that the galaxy was experiencing a period of unusual good fortune, rather than recognizing that they were seeing the effects of human intervention. Supreme Chancellor Arcturus himself reviewed reports of the strange occurrences. The leader who had announced humanity rejection now faced evidence that someone or something was operating throughout coalition space with technology far superior to their own. But every investigation led to dead ends and unanswered questions. The pirates who had terrorized galactic commerce for generations were being eliminated with surgical precision. Entire fleets would disappear overnight, leaving behind only debris and confused survivors who spoke of ships that appeared from nowhere. The few pirates who lived to tell their stories described weapons that could tear through any armor and enemies, who seemed to know their every move before they made it. Mining operations on distant worlds reported finding rich deposits that had never appeared on any survey. New veins of rare metals would appear exactly where they were needed most, as if someone was guiding the discovery of resources. The Coalition Geological Service could not explain how their surveys had missed such obvious wealth. Scientific research stations across the galaxy were reporting breakthroughs at an unprecedented rate. Diseases that had puzzled alien doctors for centuries suddenly had cures. Problems in physics and engineering that had seemed impossible were being solved with elegant solutions that appeared in anonymous data packets. President Hyunwoo met with his cabinet in the secure chambers beneath New Seoul to review humanity progress. The transformation was beyond anything they had imagined. When the rejection first occurred, Earth had become the center of a hidden empire that spanned the galaxy, controlling resources and technology that dwarfed anything the Coalition possessed. The irony was perfect. The aliens who had rejected humanity for being too primitive now lived in a galaxy secretly controlled by human innovation. They used human technology, ate food, grown with human techniques, and lived under the protection of human military forces without knowing it. The species they had excluded had become their invisible rulers. Human colonies now numbered in the hundreds spread across star systems the Coalition had never explored. Each world was a fortress of technology and genetic adaptation that could survive any attack the galaxy might mount. The population had grown to rival the Coalition itself, but remained completely hidden from alien detection. The stage was set for the greatest revelation in galactic history. Humanity had spent 10 years building an empire in the shadows. Now events were about to force them into the light. The galaxy would soon learn that the species they had rejected had become their masters. The rejected would become the rulers, and the excluders would become the excluded. The next phase of human expansion was about to begin, and the galaxy was completely unprepared for what was coming. 15 years after humanity rejection, the galaxy faced its greatest nightmare. The Devourers had awakened from their million-year sleep and begun consuming entire star systems. Supreme Chancellor Arcturus stood in the Coalition Emergency Command Center watching as another red dot disappeared from the galactic map. The ancient machine race was destroying everything in their path, and nothing could stop them. The first warnings came from deep space monitoring stations that detected massive energy signatures moving between star systems. Coalition scientists initially dismissed the readings as equipment malfunctions until the Altarian outer colonies went silent. The proud blue-skinned aliens who had led the vote against humanity sent desperate distress calls before their transmissions cut off forever. Admiral Minho, now serving as Earth Defense Coordinator, received the Coalition emergency broadcasts in his command center. The same aliens who had rejected humanity were begging for help from anyone in the galaxy who possessed advanced technology. The irony was not lost on him, but human leaders had more important concerns than settling old scores. The Devourers were unlike anything the galaxy had faced before. They were not a species, but a collection of self-replicating machines that consumed matter to build more of themselves. Each ship was the size of a small moon and could strip mine entire planets in days, converting raw materials into thousands of smaller attack craft that swarmed like mechanical insects. The Altarian homeworld with its 12 billion inhabitants lasted only 6 hours against the Devourer assault. The ancient capital that had stood for millennia was reduced to floating debris while the machine swarm grew larger and more dangerous. The blue-skinned aliens who had considered themselves superior to humanity were extinct within a single day. The Nexari Empire fared no better. Their military fleets engaged the Devourers in massive space battles that lit up entire systems with weapons fire. For 3 days the galaxy watched as the Nexari threw everything they had at the machine swarm. The result was total annihilation, as Devourer ships emerged from the battles completely undamaged while alien vessels were torn apart. Vorthan colonies tried to evacuate their populations, but the Devourers moved faster than any Coalition technology could match. Refugee ships launched from doomed worlds only to be caught by the machine swarm before they could reach safety. The ancient Vorthan Empire that had voted against human membership was being wiped from existence. Dr. Somin, now Earth Chief Science Advisor, analyzed the Devourer technology from intercepted Coalition broadcasts. The machines used principles that alien science had never encountered. Their hulls were made from matter that existed in multiple dimensions, simultaneously making them nearly indestructible by conventional weapons. Their energy sources drew power from the fabric of space itself. Coalition forces retreated in panic as system after system fell to the mechanical swarm. Their most powerful weapons had no effect on Devourer armor, while the machine ships could destroy entire fleets with single shots. Military leaders who had served for centuries found themselves helpless against an enemy that operated by completely different rules. Supreme Chancellor Arcturus sent desperate messages throughout known space begging for assistance from any civilization with advanced technology. The Coalition was willing to share resources, form alliances, or pay any price for weapons that could fight the Devourers. The proud galactic government had been reduced to pleading for help from anyone who would listen. The response came from a source that stunned the galaxy. President Chewon, now in her second term leading the United Earth government, replied to the Coalition distress call. The woman who had never been allowed to address the Galactic Assembly now spoke with the authority of someone who held real power. The message was simple and direct. Earth possessed the technology needed to fight the Devourers and was willing to help. However, humanity demanded formal recognition as an equal member of the coalition with full access to trade routes, scientific exchanges, and resource-sharing agreements. The galaxy had to choose between their prejudices and their survival. Captain Wanho arrived at the Coalition Emergency Assembly aboard the massive human dreadnought Terra Pride. The ship was larger than anything in the Coalition fleet and clearly used technology that alien scientists could not understand. When it appeared without warning in the heart of Coalition space, every sensor in the system screamed alerts about unknown energy signatures. The assembled alien delegates gasped as they saw their first human warship up close. The vessel was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal while weapons ports opened and closed like breathing organisms. Energy cascaded across its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Wanho walked into the assembly chamber wearing a uniform that marked him as a captain in the human Space Force. He was young, confident, and completely unimpressed by the collection of alien leaders who had once rejected his species. His presence filled the room with tension as delegates realized they were seeing the future of galactic civilization. Terms were presented without negotiation or compromise. Earth would provide the weapons and technology needed to defeat the Devourers, but only as full members of the Coalition. Humanity wanted access to all galactic institutions, recognition of their territorial claims, and reparations for the 15 years of isolation they had endured. Some delegates tried to argue that the Coalition should not be forced into accepting terms under duress. Wanho simply activated a holographic display showing the current status of human military forces. Hundreds of ships appeared on the projection, each one more advanced than anything the Coalition possessed. The debate ended immediately. Ambassador Yuna, who had spent years building secret relationships throughout Coalition space, now stepped forward to finalize the agreement. The woman who had once pleaded for human acceptance now dictated terms to the same aliens who had rejected her. The power dynamics had completely reversed. The Coalition vote was unanimous for the first time in their history. Every species that still existed voted to accept humanity as full members. The alternative was extinction at the hands of the Devourers. The aliens who had once considered humans too primitive to join their civilization now desperately needed human technology to survive. Chancellor Arcturus himself signed the agreement that granted humanity everything they had been denied 15 years earlier. The proud leader who had announced their rejection now formally welcomed Earth as an equal partner in galactic civilization. The ceremony was broadcast throughout Coalition space as a new era began. General Dongho received authorization to deploy human forces against the Devourer threat. The military commander who had spent years building secret armies now brought them into open warfare. His ships began appearing throughout Coalition space as humanity revealed the true extent of their hidden empire. The galaxy learned that humans had been watching and protecting them for years without recognition. The mysterious aid that had appeared throughout Coalition territory, the pirates that had vanished overnight, the resources that had appeared on struggling worlds, all of it had been human intervention. Operating in the shadows, Dr. Yuna transported her wormhole generators to the front lines where they would give human forces the mobility needed to fight the Devourers. Her technology that had started the human expansion would now be used to save the galaxy from total destruction. The rejected had become the savior's engineer. Jihi began mass-producing weapons designed specifically to fight Devourer technology. Her molecular assemblers worked around the clock, creating armaments that could damage machines existing in multiple dimensions. The genius who had built the hidden empire would now weaponize it for galactic defense. The first joint human coalition fleet assembled at the fortress world of Kepler 442b, where Governor Kang Min opened his planet to alien refugees. Millions of coalition citizens saw human technology up close for the first time, realizing that the species they had rejected had surpassed them in every way. The battle for galactic survival was about to begin, and humanity would lead the fight against the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. The excluded had become the protectors, and the rejected would determine the fate of every species that had once denied them membership. The Devourers had awakened, expecting to find the same weak civilizations they had encountered 1,000,000 years before. Instead, they would face humanity, at the height of their power, backed by technology that could challenge even ancient machine gods. The greatest war in galactic history was about to begin. The battle for the Centauri system would be remembered as the turning point in the war against the Devourers. Admiral Gina commanded the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history, with human ships leading formations of coalition vessels into combat against the mechanical swarm. The sight was magnificent and terrifying as thousands of warships prepared to face an enemy that had already consumed half the galaxy. The Devourer force that awaited them was beyond anything the Coalition had encountered before. Massive machine ships the size of small moons floated in perfect formation, surrounded by clouds of smaller attack craft that numbered in the millions. Each vessel was a work of ancient engineering that had been perfected over countless battles spanning millions of years. Human ships moved differently than their coalition allies. While alien vessels formed traditional battle lines and approached the enemy in predictable patterns, human warships used their wormhole technology to appear and disappear throughout the battlefield. They struck vital targets, vanished before return fire could reach them, and reappeared elsewhere to continue the attack. The first phase of the battle seemed hopeless for the Galactic Force's Devourer weapons tore through Coalition shields like they were made of paper, while alien energy beams had no effect on the machine armor. Entire squadrons of Coalition ships were destroyed in minutes, as the mechanical swarm demonstrated why they had been unstoppable for so long. Then the human weapons opened fire. Dr. Bogum quantum disruptors struck the Devourer ships with energy that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The machines that had seemed invincible suddenly found their armor useless against weapons that attacked them on levels they could not defend. For the first time in the war, the mechanical swarm was taking damage. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Devourer ships that had ignored Coalition weapons began retreating when human disruptors locked onto them. The machines that had shown no emotion or fear suddenly displayed something that looked like panic, as their supposedly invulnerable hulls were torn apart by human technology. Captain Nari led her strike force directly into the heart of the Devourer formation, using tactics that no machine intelligence could predict. Her ships moved like dancers through the enemy ranks, appearing and disappearing in patterns that confused the ancient targeting systems. The Devourers had been programmed to fight traditional space battles, but human warfare was something entirely new. Coalition forces watched in amazement as human ships single-handedly turned the tide of battle. The same aliens, who had once considered humanity too primitive to join their civilization, now witnessed Earth technology defeating enemies that had seemed unbeatable. The psychological impact was as important as the military victory. The battle raged for 18 hours as human forces systematically dismantled the Devourer fleet. Engineered Jihi weapons proved devastating against machine armor, while Dr. Yuna wormhole generators allowed human ships to strike from impossible angles. The ancient machines that had conquered countless civilizations found themselves outmatched by human innovation. When the last Devourer ship was destroyed, the Centauri system fell silent except for the cheers of Coalition survivors. The mechanical swarm that had threatened to consume the galaxy had been stopped for the first time. The tide of war had turned and hope was returning to civilizations that had faced extinction. News of the victory spread throughout Coalition space faster than light itself. Worlds that had been preparing for evacuation suddenly found themselves celebrating as the unstoppable enemy had finally been stopped. The species that had voted to exclude humanity now realized that Earth had become their salvation, but the war was far from over. The Devourers had more fleets scattered throughout the galaxy, and their main production facilities remained intact in the dark regions beyond known space. The victory at Centauri had proven that the machines could be defeated, but destroying them completely would require striking at their source. Intelligence gathered from captured Devourer technology revealed the location of their home system in a region of space that had been considered unreachable by Coalition science. The ancient machines had built their primary manufacturing facilities around a black hole using the intense gravitational fields to power their construction processes. President Chaewon authorized the most ambitious military operation in galactic history. The entire human fleet would assault the Devourer home system, using technology that had never been tested on such a scale. Engineer Sunho had developed planet-killer missiles that could destroy entire worlds, but using them would require getting close to the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. The final assault force consisted of every human warship that could be spared, along with the most advanced coalition vessels that had survived the war. Admiral Gina commanded the combined fleet from her flagship Terra Eternal, a massive dreadnought that incorporated every breakthrough human science had achieved. The journey to the Devourer home system took the fleet through regions of space that had never been explored by any organic species. The ancient machines had chosen their location, well hiding their most important facilities in an area where normal matter could barely exist. The intense radiation and gravitational distortions would have killed any coalition crew instantly. Human genetic modifications allowed the crew to survive conditions that would have been fatal to unmodified humans. The soldiers and officers who had been altered to live on hostile worlds now found themselves capable of operating in the most extreme environment the galaxy had to offer. Their enhanced bodies thrived where alien physiology would fail. The Devourer home system was a nightmare of mechanical construction that stretched across multiple worlds. Massive factories floated in orbit around the black hole, converting raw matter into new machine ships at a rate that boggled the imagination. The production capacity was enough to replace entire fleets within days. The final battle was unlike anything in recorded history. Human ships emerged from wormholes throughout the system, striking at production facilities while coalition forces engaged the defensive fleets. The space around the black hole became a maze of energy beams and exploding vessels as two vastly different civilizations fought for the fate of the galaxy. Engineer Sunho planet-killer missiles proved to be the decisive weapons. The quantum warheads detonated inside the Devourer factories, destroying the ancient production lines that had operated for millions of years. The machines that had seemed infinite in number suddenly found their ability to reproduce severed. The destruction of the Devourer home system ended the threat permanently. The remaining machine ships throughout the galaxy shut down when their control signals were cut. The ancient enemy that had awakened to consume everything had been defeated by the species the galaxy had considered too primitive to be worth bothering with. The victory celebration on Harmony Station was the largest gathering in Coalition history. Representatives from every surviving species came to honor the human forces that had saved them. President Chaewon accepted their formal welcome to the Coalition, but made it clear that Earth would never forget how they had been treated. The ceremony included the signing of new treaties that recognized human territorial claims throughout the galaxy. The hidden colonies that had been built in secret were now officially part of the Coalition. The species that had once been excluded now controlled some of the most valuable real estate in known space. Chancellor Arcturus, who had announced humanity rejection 15 years earlier, now stood to praise their courage and sacrifice, the man who had led the vote against human membership formally apologized to President Chaewon and the assembled human delegation. The politics of the galaxy had been permanently altered. Dr. Soman, now serving as Earth ambassador to the Coalition, addressed the assembly with words that would be remembered for generations. The galaxy learned to fear us when we were divided and primitive, she said. Imagine what we can achieve now that we are united and advanced. The future belongs to those who never give up. The aftermath of the war saw humanity emerge as the dominant force in galactic civilization. The technology that had been developed in secret now became available to Coalition members through carefully controlled agreements. Earth had gone from being excluded to being essential in less than 20 years. Human colonies spread throughout the galaxy as wormhole technology made colonization faster and easier than ever before. Worlds that had been considered uninhabitable became thriving human settlements. The species that had been denied membership now claimed more territory than any other Coalition member. The genetic modifications that had allowed humans to survive in extreme environments became available to other species through human medical centers. Aliens, who had once looked down on human biology, now sought to incorporate human enhancements into their own physiology. The rejected had become the desired. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson in its history. Never underestimate a species based on their past when their future remains unwritten. Humanity had proven that exclusion and rejection could become the greatest motivators for achievement. The vote that was meant to keep Earth out of galactic civilization had instead forced them to surpass it. The story of humanity rejection and ultimate triumph became a legend told throughout the galaxy. The species that had been considered too violent and primitive to join civilized society had instead become